Also hit record. That would be good. There's Caitlin. Hi.
Hi, Ryan. Glad
Hey.
you could help me with that.
It's all good.
Hi, Lisa.
Yeah.
Hi, Caitlin. You.
You too.
Yes, especially any local mystics or mystics who have been in the Central Coast may have met Caitlin at one of the meetups.
Yeah.
Santa Barbara, that's where I first met Caitlin. I'm so excited to have come full circle and to be inviting you and welcoming you into the salon today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm excited. And I see Kayla's on the line too.
Great to see Kayla.
Yeah.
Mary Sage, I see, is on the line. She's also local, but she hasn't come down to a meetup yet. I'll have to bring her down with me. Sarah's here. Lots of others joining us. And of course, we have the recording going up on the portal. And Caitlin, before I introduce you, I'm just going to do a little bit of an update to the Mystic Society about some current events, and then, we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm so excited to see everyone. I was just talking with Lisa before we started about just the awareness and the gratitude I feel of having come to the end of 2015 and doing our last salon of the year. I think this is the most important salon of the year for reasons we're going to get into, but you're going to see how everything that we've talked about throughout the year, whether that's the journey to right livelihood, whether that's manifestation, whether that's energetics, it all has one common denominator, and that's you, the vessel through which you're running this. And so I could not be more grateful and honored to welcome Caitlin on this topic. I truly feel like this is the most important conversation we'll have this entire year. So I'm really excited. I also want to say a little bit about what's going on in the portal this month. For those of you in the Mystic Society, we're talking about a practice called Renewal of Creative Path. It is it's a great practice and approach for bringing in all of the gifts of the year that we've just had and integrating them. So our conversation today about how you are the vessel through which we integrate really feeds into the content this month about Renewal of Creative Path. So I want to encourage you to keep an eye out for that. It will be coming out on Monday. And then the Business Alchemy Breakout, which is on the 15th, we're going to be talking about new paradigm strategy. So I know so many of us are already deep into what our strategy for 2016 is going to look like and what our business strategy wants to be. We talked about new paradigm and business alchemy, business processes last Business Alchemy Breakout for this reason, but we're going to be talking about strategy in new ways next week. So we can invite in some of the magic, some of the flow, some of the divine feminine into how we create our strategy. I just also want to address, I know there's been some confusion around 2016 pricing for the Mystic Society. I will answer all of the personal messages that I've gotten, but I want to just say here for anyone watching, the doors are open to the 2016 Mystic Society. What is ending today on December 8th when we're recording this is the ability to join for 2016 at 2015 pricing. So that's it. So the questions about is it closing? There's no scarcity in the Mystic Society. The doors do not close. Everybody who comes will come at the exact right time for them. And when you join, that's the exact right gift or price for you. And you get to keep that with you for the full lifetime of your time journeying with the Mystic Society. So know that as well. Lot of exciting stuff happening in the mystic world. All of the women moving from the masterminds into the mastery. Those registrations are happening and those group calls are getting planned and the retreats are getting planned. So I'm excited that soon I'll be able to communicate all of those continuing on the mastery journey. Also excited in the coming weeks to introduce you all to the women journeying in the 2016 mastermind. There's just one mastermind next year, not a January anime, just January. So I'm very excited to introduce you to that circle. We have a Mystic Society retreat happening in 2016 at long last. Lisa knows that this has been something that I've been talking about for a year. And although I do retreats for all of the individual programs, I did not end up making a general access retreat available in 2015, but it is happening in 2016. It will be at the end of the year so everyone can plan well in advance. It's going to include a lot of co-creation and overlapping of divine sister circles. I'm excited to co-host host with Elena Lipson and Celia Ward-Wallace. So we're really excited to be bringing our 3 communities together, and it will be in Mexico. So keep an eye out for that. And then one other little piece of news. Many of you know that I wrote a book this year called The Mystic Path. It's the journey to right livelihood, and that book will be coming out in the spring of 2016. In honor of both that book, but also the process and the programmatic component of the journey for the masterminds, I am going to be taking a small group of women on a journey of that journey to right livelihood content. It's going to be called the Mystic Circle. It's a way to do pieces of the mastermind, but in a group setting, since we're keeping the mastermind so limited for 2016. So keep an eye out for communications about the Mystic Circle. And if you are a woman who's journeyed through the mastermind and you know someone, I get a lot of emails about, I have a friend who would love to have this experience, but I'm keeping it so limited. How do we do that? This is going to be the way that they can do that. So I'm really excited to bring that forward. So those are the little bits of news. You may have read in my post in the Mystic Society that one day this year, I walked into the Cafe Savoy in Santa Barbara, and as soon as I came in that back door, I could feel this really unique, really vivacious, incredibly unique energy in the room. And what I noticed most about it was it held the very, very high light vibration that I so enjoy and delight in being in, that high kind of almost hummingbird light wings energy. But with it were these incredible roots, this grounding, this depth. And I quickly came to know that the energy that I was feeling was associated with our guest today, Lyon. And she really does embody within herself, within her work, within her voice, within her story. You will hear it. You'll get to experience it today. The joining of heaven and earth that we talk about so much, this ability to both be high vibrational and light, but also be very present here in the now and embodied in our true self. So I could not be more honored to welcome you, Caitlin, as our guest for this salon. I just want to thank you so much for joining us.
Wow, thank you. That was quite the intro. So excuse me if I'm speechless.
Well, I really mean it. And it's the walk that you are walking in this world is one that many of us aspire to. It's certainly one that I aspire to. I can run a lot of very high vibrational energy. I love to be in the ethers, but I work very hard on my roots. And I really do my best also to stand on the hilltops and shout out to all who are listening the importance of them growing their roots, that we really can't do this work of weaving our magic and manifestation and true healing until we do the work to be in our bodies and to claim our experience as humans in bodies. And so I would love to just turn it over to you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your work, but maybe also lead off from that place of how it is that you've come to be walking in the way that you're walking in the world.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I feel like my story is the perfect weaving for what you're talking about, too. I was with a colleague this morning. You might know her, actually. I was in San Luis. I was closer to you.
Oh, my goodness.
Dr. Zoe.
Zoe Wells, yes.
Yeah. And we were talking about this, and it was another colleague of mine that recently asked me, when it comes to our healing and embodiment, do you think it's about biochemistry? Do you think it's about archetypal or ancestral, or where do you see it arising from? And I said, well, it's all part of it. I don't see as any, it's not on a hierarchy for me as far as even how I treat. But I'll go back to, I guess, how I got on the healing path. When I was in school as an anthropology student, my passion was medical anthropology. So I was already studying healing traditions. But what my most, I guess what was the hardest thing for my mind to grasp was how we as various societies deal with trauma as a collective trauma and how we normalize it, how much we can actually function even with that happening. And so I ended up studying the peace process that was happening in Belfast. And I got into documentary work, and I ended up back in San Francisco, and was really, because I was so passionate about it, I really thought that's what I was going to do. I was quite a advocate, and I was documenting peace rallies and war protests and people on the streets, veterans. And then I experienced my own personal trauma, and with two different instances of assault, and my body physically could not go on. I couldn't function. The first time I kind of brushed it off, and by the second time, I think I was so dissociated at that point, although I didn't have a language for it. But a lot of people that come to me now, and healers too, it's like that sense of ungroundedness. I just felt like really lost, and I was still so passionate about something, but I just physically, my energy could not take me to those places anymore. So now my inquiry was still trauma. Like, how do we overcome trauma? How do we integrate it? Now it's from a place of what are the personal pathways for that? And through that, it was, I was really in the spiritual world. I was studying Buddhism, various healing arts, Reiki, all that kind of stuff. And I still didn't have a sense of ground, though. It was temporary. I would have bliss states. I would see things, feel things. It was all that of kind of living as an empath, but no real sense of ground in my life or integration in areas of my life. And so now my inquiry was really about what I call the bliss of our biology. But from going so much into the art and the you could say the craft of healing and that intuitive sense of it, it was now, how does that bridge with what is the essence, the very physical essence of our body? And I feel like I've arrived in some sense of that. The inquiry never ends. As far as learning, I think when you're a seeker, that even if you feel that sense of embodiment, it's like there's still so much to know and to understand. But what I love bridging for people is that bliss state in their body that's moment to moment, that's a direct experience. I feel like a lot of us can rely on our training, or it's almost like masquerade as our training as our gifts. And really there's a unique backdrop to that makes that training so viable for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I want to talk about the bliss of biology and bliss states, but I feel like it would kind of be sweeping it under the rug to not at least presence the trauma piece a little bit, because each and every one of us, especially as women, have integrated trauma on some level. Even if you don't identify with physical, emotional, or sexual trauma in this lifetime, we're all carrying elements of ancestral trauma, cultural trauma. Can you talk a little bit about how we can conceptualize that trauma and ways that we can begin to surface it and allow it to move? Yeah.
What I've really noticed, and this has come from more my clinical practice too, but I really reoriented, even with all so I kind of left a little bit out, but I did study Chinese medicine too after I left documentary work, and looking at patterns and how that manifests in the body from trauma, usually stemming from trauma. What I love to reorient to is first locating a sense of wholeness in ourselves, however we relate to wholeness. And sometimes that's a great challenge for people that have been so distanced from that sense of well-being, whether it's because of chronic illness or because of a specific traumatic experience or abuse, those types of things. But that if we can build a language of how we talk about wholeness and how we identify it in our bodies, and from there titrate how we then connect to our trauma, right? And there's a lot of different methods now that are really understanding this.
Yeah.
It's, again, it's in our biology. It's how animals overcome trauma. But this centeredness of finding, locating any amount of presence in this moment that you can, whether that's through your feet, or sometimes I even joke, through the tip of your nose.
Yeah.
Even if that's the only thing that feels good in this moment, that's something that you can anchor into.
Yeah.
And you start to build upon that. That in itself changes our neurons, and that in itself rebuilds this, we call it body mapping, but this real structure of our wholeness, and how that's, our natural state is space, parasympathetically. And in my work, we talk a lot about relational fields too. So sometimes that's, if there's trauma. We did an exercise recently in the program that I teach for body intelligence. And it was wild, even with all of the work that I've had, body work that I've received and trauma work that I've done, and how much I've, how many retreats and meditation sessions I've done, to do this exercise with relational fields, and where you partner with somebody and one of us stands and holds our space, and once you feel like you're holding presence for yourself, the other person goes around the boundary of what they feel like your relational field is. Yeah. And it moment to moment, as that person migrates, I could feel, I could remember where I'd been impacted from behind, and she could feel it too. She started kind of giggling, like this nervousness. And that's what it is now. It's kind of this bubbly sensation of something isn't right there, but it's not the alarming sense of, I'm going to go into shock right now.
Sure.
So that titration, that, bit by bit, we can soften that as our sense of self builds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love how your approach to thinking about and working with women on trauma starts in the now and brings them into the now. So much good work. Of course, psychotherapy work has its plus sides as well, but so much of the work has to do with going back and reliving or reaccessing or, and that's got its place for sure. Mm-hmm. But there's this missing piece that you're touching on, which is how do we actually then rewire and repattern in the now, and anchoring into where are you right now? What feels good right now? And how can we then, move forward from that place?
That's it.
So that's the rewiring the vessel. I think as we're talking about energetics and we talk about manifestation, we're talking about all these ways in which we grow our belief and awareness and practice at attracting to us. So many women end up with this feeling of, well, why am I still attracting the old thing? Or why am I still experiencing this pattern, or, stuck in this pattern? And it almost always comes back to, well, what is the vessel that you're running it through? What is the prism you're holding up to the light? And if we don't at least talk about the trauma, it's essentially like leaving fingerprints on the prism. It leaves that patterning. So yes, the now piece feels so important. I also love the relationship fields. When I do beginning energetics classes, I love those practices around feeling your own energy body and feeling other people's, and then what can we sense of each other's, and what, as you're describing, what can you learn about how you're carrying your light body as part of your vessel with you based on what experiences, illness, trauma, whatever you might have. Sometimes just bringing our attention to it. As you said, between the inquiry and the awareness, sometimes that's enough to help it.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? Yeah.
Oh, totally. That's oftentimes, in fact, I have one client that I'm thinking of that has had PTSD, and that was her diagnosis that she came in with, and she jokes now because when she would come to, and this is what happens for a lot of people when they start to, if we've been dissociated because of trauma and now we're coming back into our bodies, and there's that kind of there's that alarm state of,
Right.
oh my gosh, I'm feeling something again.
Right.
Is this good or bad? And I said, just acknowledge it. And she knows now. It'll immediately shift.
Right.
Or sometimes I'll be in a phone session with somebody and I'll be sensing a shift and I'll say it and they'll say, oh, I don't feel that. And then 4 or 5 seconds later, oh, that just happened. And it's kind of that, it really does shift that quickly. It's not our awareness is the most potent thing we have. And like you were saying, it's not that going into the story or the experience and sharing that story isn't important, but oftentimes it's the loop that we're stuck in, and we've forgotten the widened perception of
Absolutely.
much larger perception of who we are.
Absolutely. Well, and I find that increasingly the block, at least for women who find their way into my world or into new paradigm business and living, they're not blocked on the level of sharing their story or being vulnerable about sharing it. It's like there's almost this feeling like I've done all the work. I've been through the therapy and I promise you I've journaled it out. Why am I still manifesting a pattern? And so often it's because of that cellular piece, that piece that's in our vessel that wants to be moved forward. And I also really hope people will receive the permission that you just granted to, this is in no way about shooing the story away or sweeping it under the rug, but you don't necessarily then have to go through those steps you think you have to go to of attaching story as you experience energetic release. So if you're working with someone like Caitlin, or you're doing EFT or tapping, or you're doing theta work, grant yourself the spaciousness to just feel what wants to be felt and see what wants to be seen without having to apply a big story to it. Like, this is who I am, or this is my way, or this is my pattern. Observe and release. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. So as people start to surface and move their trauma and really embrace it, see the alchemy, the gift that trauma can be, and are moving towards increasing numbers of bliss moments, what you called, I think, a bliss state, what can they expect, and what is that bliss of biology through your lens?
Yeah, well, so I'll say what I sense in people when they can confirm that, right? When it's sort of validated for how they're feeling, is there is a almost like a resting back into our field, and the how I feel it in the body is that their rhythms have slowed down, more aligned with the rhythms in nature. And that's when I think we have a real sense of, again, that wholeness, or just that sense of flow in life, is when we are syncing with those rhythms. And there's a brilliant, he's a body worker, he was a continuum teacher, his name's Cass Phelps. But if anyone wants to experiment with these, he has these things called biotunes. And he's basically synchronized these different sounds to harmonize with our natural state, basically, our body rhythms, what they should be in a healthy state. And it's a great way of meditating on that to locate it for yourself. But like you were talking about with manifestation, I think the two are so connected. And in fact, I've been writing case studies, and I don't know what's going to happen with it. I'm thinking it might be a book, but it's just this interesting insight that I've had of many different clients that have come in a place of either financial struggle or just feeling like everything was working and now nothing's going right, or that kind of major contrast where they're really starting to doubt themselves or doubt what's going on. And after even a few sessions, I can think of this one in LA. She was so down on herself, didn't think, she'd sell another house, didn't think she's a realtor. She was so successful, and I saw her as that. I held her in that until she could see herself in that again. And within a few months, she had multiple listings and, was back on top in a way that, even she understood that it was something to do with what we had done together. But
Totally.
I couldn't totally name it, and she couldn't totally name it, but it was just this connection to that whole sort of few months together that I could see her expanding back into it.
Absolutely. And just for people listening, I just want to like take a step back there, because throughout our time in the Mystic Society and in talking about business and life alchemy, we're talking about three primary forms of energy. We're talking about our life force energy, which is our personal health. We talk a lot about our resonant energy. So that's the energy that connects us to, it could be to ourselves in certain ways.
Hi, Jen.
It could be it can be to the earth. It can be to spirit. It can be to each other. It can be to our clients. But that resonant energy is that connective energy, that flow. And then money, of course, is a third one, or the material world is another form of energy.
Mm-hmm.
They are all energy ultimately. And so, of course, if we can accept that trauma release work or embodiment work or bliss awareness is a positive thing for our life force energy, for our personal health, well, then, of course, it would logically follow that it would have a positive influence on our resonant energy and our material energy, like money or other things that we might be manifesting in our life. So
yeah,
sometimes I do get the question from people of, well, I understand energetics and healing work if you're talking about illness, but how does that apply to business, or how does that apply to, these other forms of energy? And I really think ultimately they're all one and the same. It's just different lenses through which we're looking at how we run energy through us.
absolutely. Yeah. And I shared, last night I shared a story in one group, the Soul Medicine Tribe on Facebook, about, even for myself, I got to this point in my business that was a place of, I knew I had grown very quickly, and I wasn't sure what the next steps were. So, I looked for guidance from supposed business experts, which I'm sure are great in their fields, right? If you're a business coach or something like that. But I really felt like I needed someone from the outside to give me direction. And what happened in that, though, was that, they had a system and a way of, let's niche your brand, let's do this and that. And I fell out of what for me felt like integrity or a more easeful state. And it was like, it literally felt like somebody tossed me off the island. I just was kind of disoriented with it. And again, it's not that they don't have their genius, and it probably works for a lot of people. But I think when you're a mystic, that, especially for alignment and integrity, that's a core value of mine.
Absolutely.
And so the moment that I came back to that, I kind of surrendered. I let it go that I had invested so much money and time, and I said, in fact, if you go to my website right now, it's just a homepage. But the funny thing is that the more I just settled back in what that presence is for me, people have been finding me, and it's the wildest stories of how they do, this gentleman came to me, and he was one that thought he was coming to me for his migraines, which we did treat. But he kept telling me that he got referred by someone, and I said, well, who referred you? And he said, oh, you wouldn't know her. She's new to the area. Well, he named her, and she was a woman from New Mexico that I had actually met at a conference years ago. And she hadn't referred him to me. She had referred him for the work, and he just happened to find me on Google.
Oh, amazing.
And it turns out she now lives in Santa Barbara. She lived right down the street from me. So it's been those kind of situations lately that just affirm that like what you're talking about, just that if we can use the energy work for ourselves and really find what our core strengths are, our core values are, that can highlight. And now I have a better sense. I'm sure I will hire the experts to, I'll outsource a lot of that web stuff, but I have a much better sense of how to go about doing that.
Well, and I love how just in your telling of this story that as you aligned to your truth and got clear on what felt right for you, then what you started to experience was a flow of people to you. So that's what we in our world we call the resonance or the attraction happening.
Yeah.
And then what the outcome is that sense of synchronicity and magic and the things that you just can't make up, the way people are connected and the unexpected little gifts that just are so surprising and delightful. So,
and what I was going to say about him too,
yeah.
I got sidetracked, but so I was really anchoring into how I wanted to work more with people, which is like what you're talking about, kind of getting back to the magic of energy medicine and not just treating, not that I don't value treating people with chronic illness and such, but really to get them back in a sense of magic for themselves. And so he comes, he's never done really any kind of body work. I asked him multiple times if he had surgeries, those types of things. He said no. And he's on my table and I'm holding his back and it just starts to unwind. I mean, a real uncoiling. He's feeling this. I can tell he's feeling it. He didn't say anything. You know, I checked in with him a couple times and I kept asking him because it really felt like he'd had surgery, and he had. And he was kind of quiet, got off the table, but he asked to book another session. He came back in the next session. And it immediately, Lindsay, it was like we were in a golden temple or something. I mean, I closed my eyes and the room just went light. And he at one point pops his head up, looks at me, and says, "Did you say something?" And I said, "No, what are you know?" So we started a conversation about, well, there were people, he said there were people in the room, he was having full conversations. He was really kind of bewildered, and I had to let him know what I was feeling, and it did feel more ancestral and kind of like these different layers. But when he got up, his eyes and everything, it was like totally different human being.
Yeah.
And I've been having a lot of experiences like that lately, where I think because my intention is so strong that I'm prioritizing safety and trust for whoever's there, but that it just be a potent healing experience.
Yeah.
That people are opening to those other avenues that before I might have just kind of kept wrapped up for certain crew, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
People that I knew were fellow mystics. Now it's just kind of like letting whatever wants to arrive really have permission to arrive, because I feel safe and comfortable with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're seeing it everywhere now.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how much my different worlds, the corporate side, the healing world, the app side, the mystic side, how they're all really, really connecting more and more.
Yeah.
How we're seeing it in mainstream movies, in children's movies.
Yes.
In pop music. I mean, the collective conscious really is asking for this remembering of who we are as full whole beings, not just our bodies, not just our psyches even, but our energetic bodies and our light body as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I realized as you were sharing this story that with my excitement diving in, I didn't really give you the opportunity to say exactly what you do and how you do work in the world. Let's take a step back and share with people. So you have an in-person practice in Santa Barbara and you also work online. Will you tell us a little bit about both of those things and how all of these different pieces of your experience and training have fed into what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I did graduate studies in Chinese medicine and with an emphasis in gynecology. So I was still focused on women's health, especially emotional well-being. And then biodynamic craniocycle work was a lifesaver for me, and that's now my primary in-person work. It influences a lot of my perspective now, even what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an assistant tutor for Body Intelligence, which is an international craniosacral training. It's just now coming into the States. So we graduated our first LA class this summer. They're 2-year graduates. And so I mentor a lot of craniosacral therapists, and both from a personal and professional standpoint of like integration, and also just developing a refinement in their sensitivity and how they feel and work with bodies and work with people.
Absolutely.
And also how to build and establish their physical practices, business practices. And then online, it's more transformational work, people in transition a lot of times dealing with trauma, but sometimes just in a place of needing to shift things, knowing they want to, not sure how.
Yeah.
And so guiding them in that. And then I do a few in-person retreats, day-longs, and we'll be having a New Year's workshop in Orchid, California.
Wonderful.
And I'll mention I also have an in-person practice in Solving.
Okay.
So Solving in Santa Barbara right now.
Wonderful. Oh, I encourage people to come out to the Central Coast. And if you're out here in the Central Coast and see Caitlin, make sure you ping me as well. We'll have tea at Cafe Savoy.
I would love that.
That would be so fun.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on craniosacral therapy before we get really back into the thread of how to support people in embracing themselves as this vessel to healing and transformation and light. Because I'm not sure if all of our mystics here are fully familiar with craniosacral therapy. It's something you and I have in common. I think my craniosacral therapy training was one of the most pivotal components of what helped me integrate the different, seemingly disparate facets of my life. Mm-hmm. I was coming into craniosacral therapy training having done energy work with the Global Alliance for Balance and Healing. And I wanted to come back into the body. So as I was saying at the beginning, there's part of me that aspires to not just be the hummingbird, but to also have the deep roots, wanted to come into the body more and to have a practice and to facilitate healing within the body. I think maybe every other person that was in my training were actually either physical healers or acupuncturists or massage therapists who were trying to move into the energetics. Yeah. So it was a really fascinating thing that happened in that training process because we ended up having a lot of conversations about exactly this. The body is the vessel for this intersection between the physical and the energetic. Mm-hmm. Do you see those same kinds of patterns both in the people that you train and mentor, but also the people who end up coming to you for transformational work through this doorway of craniosacral therapy?
Yes, and this is so funny because I didn't know that about you.
Oh.
But I studied with the Global Alliance too. I was certified in Reiki by Julie McKenna. So that was my initial healing training.
Okay.
And so I too ended up at my first craniosacral program. And they were chiropractors, physical therapists, and I was having I was probably reliving a trauma and didn't know it, because I wanted to jump off the table and run out of the room.
Right.
And there was nobody that understood. I can't say nobody, but anybody that was in my vicinity, nobody could really give me any kind of feedback on what was happening. Mm-hmm. So I kind of checked it off, craniosacral work. I received it really well from practitioners that I knew, but I let it go, and I was studying energetics of Chinese medicine, and I got to this point where I really felt like I needed a craniosacral session, so I went to she was a biodynamic practitioner, ended up being my teacher, but I went, and it was so different, and it was so, as you're saying, it was so subtle body that and as a sensitive, I just soaked it up. And she was speaking my language. Mm-hmm. She was actually a rolfer, taught rolfing. So she was very structural, but she had this real understanding of the fluid body, I would say of the feminine body too, and then of the energetics. So I knew that was going to be a part of my life. And for anybody that's not familiar with craniosacral, it's a light touch form of body work that really bridges mind-body medicine And we're working with the rhythms of the body. We're working with the autonomic nervous system, really helping the central nervous system self-heal. So what's interesting is that a lot of my students or the students in the program are have come from bodywork backgrounds, but the ones that end up in mentoring with me, or I would say in my pod, are these ones that maybe they've been, as I say, masquerading as a body worker, but they've been feeling a lot of things. They just don't know what they're feeling.
Yes.
And so they're just like bright, shiny stars, because they're so excited to finally have, again, language. And that's how I felt. I felt like I'd walked through the world since I was a little kid, as a child, feeling, sensing things, and thinking it was either really weird or not relevant or something that I really shouldn't pay attention to. Yeah. And now suddenly it's my greatest asset. And I think a lot of people, whether or not they come to me for mentoring as practitioners or whether it's just how they lead their lives, they're really excited. And that's why I love working with new moms now with babies. And even with highly sensitive children, it's like they have a new way of being with them. And that's real freedom. I mean, that's just so exciting.
I know what you're saying right now is going to resonate with everyone listening. The women who find their way into these mystics conversations are sensitives. They have been seeing things through their own unique lens. They are absorbing context and vocabulary for what they've been feeling their whole lives in unbelievable ways. So whether you're masquerading as, a massage therapist, as you said, or I see it all the time as a corporate attorney or
exactly.
as Wall Street.
I know a lot of lawyers.
Lots of lawyers. So many who have been finding their own way without a lot of riverbanks or support for their sensitivity, and how enlivening and how much freedom comes from not just learning how to deal with it, but actually doing the alchemy work of letting it become your greatest asset, as you said.
Yeah,
beautiful. So I know everyone's going to want to know how you've achieved this unbelievable merging of heaven and earth within yourself, and then of course all the ways that then manifests, as we spoke. It manifests in feeling aligned to what you're doing in your work in the world, feeling really good about the money that you're making, feeling in sync with your body rhythms, all of these, your attunement to nature. I know that you shared the piece of your story about allowing trauma to be surfaced and seen. What are some of the other ways that you have supported the growing of these beautiful deep roots in yourself and in your work and your life, even into maybe what are some of your core routines around the way you walk in the world?
Yeah. So I say my medicine is full body presence. So like I was saying, even how we work with trauma, but in the morning I start with really getting a sense of weightedness in my body before I even get out of bed. So just how I rest on the bed, and letting my nervous system really sense that. The other thing, this is something that might be relevant for this group, is shifting our go-to with grounding, because what I've noticed for a lot of, I would say a lot of mystics, is we learn like a grounding cord routine, right? Or this, we're very vertical in that nature. And what I found is for our systems, for most of us, it's a widening. It's a real relationship with horizon that allows us to ground, not just in our physicality, but in our business and our relationships. It's kind of, how can you hold a sense of ground when you're with family, when you're at home, when you're in your car. So when I lived in Santa Barbara, I'm temporarily a nomad at the moment, but as often as I can, being near the ocean.
Yeah.
If you're not near the ocean, meditating in the bath is any continuum that you can find of being able to sense the fluidity in your body, because we're way more fluid than we are density, and yet we often identify more with our density.
Mm-hmm.
It almost seems counterintuitive, but I think for a lot of us mystics, we find great comfort and ground in really staying connected to our fluidity.
I know. I hope that that's really landing for everyone listening, because it isn't the typical approach. What I see too with grounding is an exercise, and I do it once during the day, and I do it through visualization, and then it's over, and I'm right back up in the ethers, and I'm about in my mind mostly. And so the idea of grounding coming from a shift of awareness into our fluidity, it's like, oh wait, how can that dichotomy exist? That is the yoga of the impossible, right?
Yes.
In allowing our true state, that actually brings us into our true state, which actually is in effect grounding. If this is not landing well, I hope people will drop questions in the chat.
Please let me know.
Yes.
You want me to go down a rabbit hole?
And I want to mention the horizon too. Part of that fluidity and the connection to what you're saying about the ocean is what a beautiful place to bring in the meditation of that expansion. Yes, to the rabbit holes, as you said. The ability to let your eye move from our screens, our little computers, the television, even interpersonal connection, and move out to the broader landscape, seeing those horizontal, that in itself is activating grounding in us.
It's huge. Yeah. And even when I was studying trauma, culturally, I came across something, and then one of my teachers confirmed it, and I wish I could find it now. I'm sure I have it in a folder somewhere, but that a lot of progressive societies are coastal, right? And that a lot of the inquiry was, is it because there's a sense of horizon and that really widening of perception that allows for the mind to stay more open? And I would say, just from direct experience, that's certainly something that I've felt. And so there's the outward, really allowing ourselves to be beyond the skin boundary. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of meditations with students, and obviously with myself, but really visualizing when you're in a state of calm, visualizing your skin becoming more porous. Mm. And that can be quite magical. I mean, if you can give yourself 40 minutes to sense that, and then your body remembers it.
Yes.
It's really, I've been in situations like, I was at LAX a couple months ago. It was when it was still really hot, and there were a few planes that were delayed, so there were like 400 people packed into LAX International in this one terminal area. And I haven't been with that many people in a long time. I tend to avoid those places. And I just had to get to this place of, okay, how do I have the container, my sense of boundary? But what I found is that if I could sense my skin becoming more porous, it was like I actually gave myself more space without it feeling bombarded.
Yeah.
So little things like that I play with. The bigger integration piece, though, like what you're talking about, is bridging heaven and earth, is more how that's held in our organs. Mm-hmm. Each gland having its own personality and its own essence. And that might sound really quite geeky and far out, but it's doing specific meditations on the endocrine system.
Yes.
On the brain. That starts to help us really inhabit our body again, without even, like we were talking about earlier, without even really going into the trauma story or maybe what those organs have held in the past, but just I've really found that's what fires the bliss of each of those glands. And
I've been referring to that as returning to our original instructions. And again, we talked about the importance of just inquiry and awareness, and the kinds of shifts we can invite just by bringing our awareness to something, just by bringing your awareness to your organ and inviting that organ to be exactly what it is, do it even without my full awareness of all the many ways it does what it does.
Yeah.
It knows what its original instructions are. It
Very
knows
true.
what it's here to do.
Yeah.
And it's like an honoring process you can go through.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a whole series that, it's been archived for my website. So those will be free meditations. And there were some that we took down, and those will be back up. So, within the coming month, if people visit that, they can find.
Love that. Wonderful.
Learn this stuff too.
There was one practice in particular that I was hoping to share with this crew, which was we touched on in our shift. I had the pleasure of interviewing for the shift interview, but it was about bringing our energy back. And we did an energetics course with Richard Barr this year, and we talked for the better part of an entire session about bringing our awareness to the back of our energy systems. And that's something I know that you support women in doing as well. Could you guide us through that? Because that in and of itself will bring this grounding effect and this merging of heaven and earth.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. The experiential.
And I guess I should jump in and say, part of why this is so important is whether you realize you do it or not, our entire culture and our entire human experience right now is leaning forward.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to go very quickly. We are leaning into electronic devices. We are leaning forward in our cars. And so we are pulling our physical selves as well as our energetic selves and our awareness forward all the time. And that has implications on our endocrine system, on our ability to manifest, on everything. And so, so anyway, a little bit of intro into why this practice that Caitlin's going to share is so helpful.
That's great. Yeah. And that's, I'll go with that a little bit more just to say that creates a vigilant state. It's also a narrowing of our perception and literally brings our eyes closer together, which keeps us more in a fear state. So what we'll start with is just noticing our eyes. And if you're staring at the screen, you can lift your eyes up for a moment, or lift your gaze up. And then let it come back down to what feels like pretty good eye level for you. And then widen your perception. So we'll keep our eyes open for now. And I have like Christmas tree to my left and the light from the window to my right, but you can find what that contour is for you. And now the thread of that behind the eyes. So whatever you can notice behind the eyes. And then closing your eyes and coming into what feels like the center of your brain. And if you were to drop a line from the center of your brain down towards your tailbone, and noticing your first hit of where you have more sense of presence in your body. Is it in front of that line or behind? I'm just being curious to that, no real judgment around it. And reconnect with the center of your brain. Now feel your sits bones. And give your weight into the left seat. And then the right. And then like you could dust your energy back, move into your back space. Feeling the contour of your shoulder blades. And feel free to move, if your spine wants to saunter or do something different, allow that to happen. And now here's a way of building your sense of back body. With your eyes closed, having as though you could feel the texture behind you. Having a picture or tracing. It all depends on what our strongest awareness is. So you might be more kinesthetic, you might be more clairsentient. For example, I can see the dresser, the shelves behind Lindsay. And Lisa has a lamp behind her. And a plant. Looks like a plant. So all of those, you're really feeding your vision through the body of what's in your space.
So good.
Yeah, how's that feeling?
Oh, it's so beautiful and such a gift. I want to thank you so much for bringing your energy and your light in. I want to invite anyone who has a question, either what you just experienced or anything, just pop it here in the chat. We have a few more minutes. We could take a couple of questions. But as you're coming out of that awareness and that energy that Caitlin just took you into, I would venture to guess that everyone is feeling more grounded right now, that everyone is feeling really connected to themselves as a vessel. So know that feeling, what you were just attuned to. Know the feeling of you and the space within you, your own awareness, where your glance goes, where it maybe wants to go versus where we allow it to go. The inquiry, the curiosity that Caitlin invites into her practices and her meditations, like that little taste you just got. So I do want to just encourage you to integrate that little gift. Caitlin, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, well, just in conclusion, or before we conclude, really, where's the best place for people to find you online? I really do want to connect them to your world and to those meditations going up again.
Yeah, so CaitlinLyon.com is my main site. My clinic site is LyonWellness.com. So if anyone wants to find out more about cranial cycle work, or my training with body intelligence, next one starts up in Ojai in February, so they can check out details about that. And they can obviously find me through Facebook, through the Mystic Society group. And I do have a private group, so if anyone is interested in being part of that, they're welcome to private message me.
Oh, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of hands raised. Absolutely. Well, wonderful. I want to encourage everyone to make those connections and to invite this beautiful energy and this wonderful light into your life. Caitlin, you have had a tremendous impact on me in the few times that we've overlapped, and I look forward to a lot more weaving in our future.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, in conclusion, I started this salon off by saying that I felt this was the most important salon that we had done all year, and I really feel that way when I think about the topics that we've covered. Everything from ACAR and resonance to seeking and sensitivity to sacred commerce to the full wheel and whole wellness to beauty way and magic. all of these things are components of awareness and tools and practices for you to integrate. But in this last hour, you've had the experience to be in the presence of someone who is really living and embodying all of those things and what that can look like and what that can feel like. And I'm sure you've heard it not just in her intellect and her experience, but also in very subtle ways, like the tempo at which you talk and your tone and your energy. And as sensitives, I'm sure everyone here has the receptor sites to not only appreciate it, but also to begin to integrate that and to allow it to come in and to allow you to be you, each of you listening, everybody here, allowing you to be in your full wheel, but to experience those outcomes we talked about, that those feelings of being in flow and having the magic and synchronicity and feeling like you're right here on the planet doing exactly what you were meant to be doing. So anyway, Kate, honestly, thank you so much for not only bringing your light, but also being my little mystic summer guinea pig and my own little living case study here. And and I look forward to seeing you and everyone else online. And happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you, Caitlin. Take care. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Lots of love.